Hello, everybody. This is Jennifer Schaus, and welcome to our Webinar Wednesday series. We are covering various topics in federal government contracting, and we hold our webinars every Wednesday throughout the year at 12 o'clock and 12:30 Eastern. All of our webinars are complimentary. They are recorded. You can find those on our website, usually by the next business day, and also on our YouTube channel. In the interest of time, we do not take questions, so please reserve your questions for today's session until afterwards, and we'll provide contact details for Alex, and you can contact her directly. A little bit about us before we get started. We do provide professional services for federal contractors all across the globe. Our primary service is helping companies with GSA schedules. That's getting onto the schedules, audits, renewals, making modifications, increasing prices, adding labor categories, products, and everything else related to GSA. We also help with certifications, including 8A, and then just general proposal writing, business development, and post-award contract administration. You can find more about our services on our website, as well as, again, all the archives from the webinars. Some events that we've got, or an event that we have coming up is an in-person class. It's an introduction to GSA schedules. It's a half-a-day seminar out in Northern Virginia on Tuesday, August 6th. You can find that on our website under the events section, and you can register by clicking on the link either in the slides that we will send out to you or, again, on our website under the events section. We offer newsletter and webinar advertising. Our newsletter reaches about 15,000 plus government contractors, and we offer 3 different tiers of advertising. You can contact Mallory Flowers to get pricing information. Today's sponsor is AccuTrack Services. They help companies with DCAA audits, budgeting and forecasting, accounting policies and systems. Their website is accutrack.biz, and they are also an 8A woman-owned small business company, so they are also selling directly to the government, as well as helping contractors. Okay, so let's dig into today's topic, which is 5 strategies to improve proposal development. We're fortunate to be joined by Alex Sutman, and her information here is on the slide, including education, her company name, and she's been in government contracting for about 10 years. So Alex, thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll let you get started with your great topic that is relevant to so many people, particularly this time of year.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'm Alex Zuckman. My business, AIS Collaborations, helps small businesses get the processes and systems needed to help them get organized and cut through the day-to-day clutter. Before starting my business, I spent 8 years as manager of operations and business development for a very small but quickly growing government contractor. It went from, when I started, I was employee number 5, and by the time I left, it was close to 60 people. So in that time, we had to revamp all operations and all infrastructure many times over, including proposals. And I went from initially pulling resumes and helping to format tables to designing the entire proposal process and training proposal managers, and basically had my hands in thousands of proposals over the time that I was there. As the company was scaling up, it went from submitting about 15 to 20 proposals a year to well over 100. And in order to do that, there was a lot of infrastructure needed. We were doing proposals for many different agencies. We were often working on several at the same time, especially this time of year. I remember not being able to take a vacation between May and September, which was not something my husband loved. But as we were doing more and more proposals and realized we needed to bring more people in, it became very evident that not having basic structures and processes was causing a lot of chaos and stress and resulting in poor quality and missed deadlines of the proposals that the company was submitting. Because I was in the weeds and I am a very organized and systems-minded person, I saw that there was a huge opportunity to take some of the chaos, especially because a lot of it was predictable. You experience the same types of challenges and errors and stressors over and over again. And I saw those as opportunities to put something in place to make the proposals, each one a better process, but then to scale up the company's capacity for handling more at the same time. So this presentation is going to share the lessons I learned and the 5 top strategies that I found were most effective. So I think of proposals as the perfect storm for stress and chaos. It's inevitable, even with all of the greatest processes and systems in place. You still have too many cooks in the kitchen. You don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of moving parts. All of those pieces just come together. You especially have people who have different knowledge bases and different priorities. The company I work for did research and evaluation. So you had the technical experts who wanted to design really brilliant methodologies and take a research question and really go far with it. And then you had the budgeting teams that realized that we couldn't afford that. It wasn't going to win, even if it was the most brilliant strategy. That was not what was going to win. So you had competing priorities there. You had different ideas about what made the best partnerships and how many subcontractors or consultants to bring on and what was the strategy for proposing who was going to do what role. You have a lot of different sections in the proposal that are dependent on other sections, and every single one of these means there's a lot of coordination and administration and opportunities for miscommunication and things to fall through the cracks. Next slide. So the challenge is, how do you take a process that is going to be inevitably is going to be sort of chaotic and crazy and make it less stressful? And there's 2 big things that you can do and that these 5 tips are going to cover. One is knowing that you're going to experience the same challenges over and over, even if 2 RFPs look incredibly different. Chances are there's some similar components. So what can you do so that you're not starting from scratch every time in terms of the process? You have a clear set of steps that you're following. And what are some things where you don't start from scratch every time in terms of the content? Are there templates or language examples that you can use? It's so much easier to start with something and build off of that than to start from scratch every time. And early on in my proposal days, that was one of the things that was most striking to me, is even if this company had submitted dozens and dozens of proposals before, every time felt like the first one. Oh, what did we do last time and where did we save this? And those to me are perfect opportunities for where to start. All right, so next slide, and now I'm going to get into the 5 strategies. The first life-saving strategy I have is using templates. Especially if you're using Microsoft Word, and I do recommend Word over Google Docs because of the formatting and style capabilities. They're really limited in Google Docs. The process of proposal writing involves a lot of copying and pasting because there is stuff that you've written before and you've used before and want to build off of. If you don't have templates, and you don't have a standard set of fonts and sizes and heading formats and headers and footers, what can happen is your final proposal, when everything is pasted in, can look really messy. You can have fonts that change halfway down a page and inconsistent headers and gaps that appear in the middle of a page and you can't fix them no matter what you do. The more things you're copying and pasting from, the more vulnerable a document is to corruption and what I like to call the little gremlins that live inside Microsoft Word, and the things that can take hours to fix, even though it looks like it should be really easy. Having a template with built-in style sets means that you're starting from a new document every single time, and when you're pasting everything to that style set. So from the beginning, as soon as you start consolidating content, it's going to have the same look. So that's time you're saving, not having to go back and fix these things later. It also lets you have consistency in your brand and how your documents look and feel across your business. You can have a header with your logo or your colors. You can use certain bullets or images over and over again, and they can be built right into the template, so you don't have to go looking for them every single time. It also ensures that your proposals look consistent across all proposals, no matter who is writing them, who is working on them. It just takes a little bit of that formatting and design and standardization work later down the road, starting from the template. You just have it up front. And to do this, you need to find someone who has excellent word proficiency, that understands the style sets and can put something together and train some people on your team on how to use it. So I absolutely recommend templates, not only just for the technical volume, but also for things like resumes and your past performance descriptions. You can make sure that not only the look of each document, but the content is the same across each person. If you have a template, all the same details are going to be there across people or across projects, across, if there's tables that you use over and over to show your process or something like that. So templates is the first big strategy. Next slide. The second is boilerplate language. As I mentioned before, there is a lot of copying and pasting from previous proposals, but when you're copying and pasting from existing proposals, you leave yourself very open to that embarrassing mistake where you realize you copy the language, but you forgot to change the name of someone that you're proposing or the name of the agency that you're submitting the proposal to. Having boilerplate language that's just very generic means you start with something, but you customize it and you don't have to worry about leaving in something from a previous proposal that's not a great fit. There's so many different pieces of proposals that you use over and over. I have a couple examples listed on the slide, that their capabilities and the company background, personnel bios, the management plan, even things like your win themes or some strategy language that you might use. It's really helpful to have this generic version that's already in the font and style set from the template that you can just paste in. It makes for a much easier way to start writing, and again, saves from the formatting at the end. Next slide. The third life-saving strategy, this is a big one, and that is spending some time documenting your company's ideal process. All of the steps from the second a bid decision is made until the proposal is submitted. And maybe if you have a database where you keep track of all of the opportunities that you've gone after, to making sure everything is entered into the database. Like I said before, there are a lot of steps that are the same across proposals, or pretty similar, not that much variation, but it's probably unique to your company. I know a lot of businesses follow the Shipley method. Some adapt it and make some customizations. Some come up with a totally different process and method. But you want to have your own way of doing things and make sure that the process is the same across all proposals. So writing all of those steps out and creating a checklist is extremely helpful. And it's not just write technical draft, get resumes. There's a million sub-steps within each of those, and you can skip them, or something can fall through the cracks, or there can be duplication of effort if you don't articulate them. So you really want to think through what each step is, what the transitions are between the different steps, who is responsible for each step, and how do they get the information they need, and how do they pass it along to the person who's next in the line. One thing that I saw was really, really common before the company had a process in place was that the back end stuff, the formatting and editing and content review and compliance review, those were getting shortchanged. The final proposal wouldn't be ready until 11 o'clock the night before it was due. And so myself and the editors and formatters would be trying to do everything from 11 to 3 in the morning. And it's really hard to do a good job on that back end stuff when you're so crunched for time. So having a list of steps and knowing how much time each step takes and what the different dependencies are between those steps lets you build in enough time for each stage, for the content review and the compliance review and the formatting. And sometimes you have to print hard copies and want to make sure you have enough time to print things and courier or mail them over to the right agency. So doing this, you start by listing the steps, and again, thinking about who does them, what order the steps should be in, and what time frame each step needs. And something else I think is really helpful is to then plug these steps into a common proposal response period. As an example, you can say sometimes there's very short turnaround where you have 2 weeks to submit something. Sometimes you have as much as 6 or 8 weeks. So what does that process look like given the amount of time you have to put a response together? When you have these sample schedules in place, when you get a proposal, you can just plug the dates right in, and that gives you some of those intermediary deadlines for different sections. You don't need to spend a lot of time coming up with the proposal schedule because you have this example to build off of. This was certainly one of the most useful tools that we had. Something else that you can do is have a checklist for the types of quality and compliance reviews. What are the things that you want people to check for? Maybe it's making sure that all of the requirements from the solicitation are in there, and you want someone to go through and make sure that everything's accounted for. Did you check all the instructions from any amendments or changes that came out in the Q&A? Make sure those are all incorporated. Make sure that you have all of the sections that you need. Little things like that. It pays to take some time and ensure that someone's going through and looking for those little details. Next slide. The fourth step, and this is another important one, is having a centralized place for storing and saving all proposal materials. People waste so much time looking for documents. Where was that proposal we submitted before? Or I know I was working on a draft earlier today, and now I have to send it to you, but I can't remember where the most recent version is. So much time is wasted, and you can end up with version control issues or duplication of efforts. So having a dedicated drive, whether it's on an internal server or Dropbox or something else, is really, really helpful. And that's for both any proposal development materials, so templates, checklists, the sample schedules we were just talking about, boilerplate language, resumes, having all of those things saved in one place so everybody who's working on proposals can easily find them. And if they're updated, everybody knows that's where the most updated versions would be. That's part of it. But then also having one centralized either folder or teamwork platform where each proposal team can work and know that all the documents relating to that particular proposal are all in one place. I've seen so many times there's a huge bottleneck because one person has the master document and nobody else can work on it or know where in the process the proposal is because that one person has it on their computer and they're away or in a meeting or sick and something happens. So having this strategy for where everything is saved and making sure everybody can access it is a huge, huge asset. And something else to think about is coming up with file naming conventions so that you can easily look in the folder and see which is the most recent version of things. Do you want to have, if everybody says technical proposal underscore final, and you have 5 versions that say, final 1, final 2, final 3, that's not that helpful. Somebody could have worked on final 1 before the person, or after somebody saved another one called final 3. So think about what information should be in the file name so you can easily tell what's what. And you might even want to come up with some rules for how many versions to save, or when do you archive old versions, so there's not too much cluttering up. So folder and file naming conventions are really a lifesaver. Next slide. This final tip, and this is actually going to be the topic of the 12:30 webinar today, is training proposal managers. These are a few people who understand the nuts and bolts of the entire proposal development process and your particular company's approach to proposal development, but who also understand how to read an RFP and understanding the content of each solicitation and how to read it. This is the point person who is going to coordinate all of the deadlines and writing assignments and nudge people to get their parts in, is checking on GSA site or FedBiz Ops for Q&A and modifications, who can fill in if needed, if something's taking longer and you need somebody else to work on certain sections. It's critical to have a point person that can keep track of everything throughout the whole process. A lot of the time, we underestimate how much work a particular proposal is going to be, and there's a lot of last minute stuff, and having a dedicated person that can drop everything and work on the proposal is really critical. It's just a huge asset to have. Those are my top 5 tips. Next slide. Yeah, this is my contact information. If you have any questions, I'm happy to provide you with any more information or talk you through this. And I hope this gave you some things to think about as ways for you to make the proposal development process slightly less tedious and more pleasant going forward. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Great information. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And we've got another webinar coming up, which is the back-to-back here. So 12:30 will be 5 tips to train the proposal manager, and hope you guys can join us. Thanks, everybody.